Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order at 9:30 a.m. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Dan, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, next we have the opportunity for the public to address the board on agendized items. Seeing nobody here in Nairi, we don't have anything online, do we? Okay, then we're going to move on to the main reason we're here today, which is agenda item 4, the study session on the superintendent search. And I am excited to introduce Dr. Gary Rutherford, who's going to establish and identify superintendent search activities and our timeline. And we'll start our discussion. So
Great.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you very much. Board, it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I feel like I know you already. Been doing a little work, enjoyed working with your staff. Our goal today is to lay the foundation for your superintendent search. Understanding you are the rare school district who has had a long term of longevity from your current superintendent. And so you're now venturing into this strange new world of a search that is unfamiliar to you, but by the end of this session, it won't be. Have any of you been trustees long enough that you were on a search committee or panel? Probably not, I wouldn't think. Okay, so there's some new terms, some new processes, and I will facilitate a little aggressively. We have a lot to get through. So you need to let me know if you have a question or anything. I will stop and entertain that. But my goal is to finish this first chunk in an hour and then go into closed session for some direction from the board under that privilege. So to get rolling, you know, I'm Gary Rutherford. I prefer Gary is fine, please. I always say, people say Dr. Rutherford, I say it's Gary or Your Highness. So you guys decide, and Gary is preferred. I'm a retired school district superintendent, retired after 16 years as a superintendent from Desert Sands. I'm joined virtually today by my partner in this search. His name is Mike Matthews. Mike is home, probably a bit sedated, getting over his knee replacement surgery. So you'll be meeting Mike when we come back and begin the community engagement, but he's very much present with us this morning. To get started, probably the hallmark of any great search, in California at least, is the confidentiality that candidates are assured when they enter the search process. You know, our goal, of course, is to attract the most qualified, widest array of candidates who are qualified for this position. And that means a confidential search. Most superintendents and assistant soups who are in good situations in their districts want that assurance because they don't want to go public until such time as they know they're a finalist. And so in your packet, first up, and some of you brought yours from home and signed it, I'll ask before we leave today if you'll take a look at that confidentiality commitment. It just basically verifies that as you come across candidates' names and situations during this search, that information is held confidential. That's an assurance we give to our potential candidates. Maybe most important in the confidentiality piece is and you will see later when we do our ads, candidates can be disqualified as a candidate if they reach out to you directly. Now, people will do that not knowing you just came back from CSBA. A person could have approached you and said, hey, I hear you're going to be looking for a superintendent. What do you think? Appropriate thing is, let me connect you with Gary Rutherford. Go on our website. Gary and Mike will take your call. It's not appropriate for us to engage. You're not going to get in trouble for that. That's well intended. But if anybody does circumvent the process and reach out to you, it may be someone you know or have met, dial them back to us. And if they're at all persistent, let us know, because that would disqualify them from consideration. Any questions on confidentiality?
Can I just ask, if we have candidates that we think would be good, is the protocol then for us just to go to you with that name and then you would reach out to that candidate?
100%.
Okay.
And in fact, we're going to talk about that when we get to the community engagement, because we ask everybody we meet, if you know of a person that you think could be a good fit for this opportunity, shoot us over their name and contact information. We will contact 100% of them and encourage them to take a look at the opportunity.
And do you have any magic words that you would like us to say when we do get the questions about how the search is going, how many people are applying? You know, I'm not at liberty to discuss that, contact Gary, or just, you know, it's.
And direct them to your website. Dan, we're going to have a superintendent update button. I've already worked with Jamie and she's got that up and ready to go live. That will have frequently asked questions for clarification for them and also updates from the board. And so, yes, just so you know, it's a confidential, I'm not at liberty to discuss it, but here, reach out to our consultant. They may have somebody that they're terrified you're going to hire and they want to tell you an awful story about somebody. That happens. Just so you know what, our search consultants want that information. Would you please reach out to them and let them know it's really not appropriate for me to take that? And that will happen. It'll also happen if you have inside candidates. And obviously the inside candidate is somewhat of a exception from this in that they will be engaging with you. They just won't be engaging with you on matters related to the search. So that takes us to timeline, which is probably the biggest. The more we can get resolved and in concrete on a timeline, the better the search goes for everybody. So the timeline is built really read from the back forward. So we looked and thought, what is a reasonable time for us to conduct a search, interview, thoroughly vet, and then we have to align that with your district adopted calendar. Now we have this beautiful window here because you won't adopt your calendar until the 17th. So if there's a superintendent can only be hired and a contract can only be approved at a regularly scheduled board meeting. You can't schedule a special one. So we took right now, your tentative board meeting in March is March 25th. Unless that date is changed, that the board has a need to move that to another date, you certainly can between now and then. Otherwise, that date works fine to complete the search and complete our vetting and bring it to you. So that is already, I think you've kind of had a working calendar. I know it won't be approved, but you had a working calendar. So I'm assuming March 25th probably worked for you guys unless we come up with something different. That's the key date where truly all 5 of you need to be on board for that one. So if we go back to the beginning of the search, and this is in your folder, paper copy. We're looking at opening up the online survey. I've already been working with Jamie and she's got the template and format. And if we confirm the content today, I can get that very quickly out to her and it can go live as early as tomorrow. It'll be pushed out through to all your usual suspects, to your parents, to your key stakeholders and influential people, to all employees, and often to high school students. And we would suggest going to grades 9 through 12. There's a drop-down menu where participants can tell us in which group they fit. And also it's open to the community at large. So if you're stopped at, what is it here, Gelson's, and ask about your the search, say, go online and complete our survey. We really want to get all the voices in there. That is every member of your community's opportunity to have their voice be heard. It will close. Well, it will close whenever we agree it closes. We set it for the 19th, which is kind of your out date to go off to the holidays. It's very easy to reopen and keep active through the 30th. We really won't have that engagement piece until January when your folks are back and we can start meeting with them. So having the survey open longer is not an issue at all. Yes, Joe, and then.
Yeah.
So we haven't seen the survey yet, though. You're going to show that today? Because I've been.
No, there was a link.
Okay, then I missed that.
It actually was true. In the proposal, the initial proposal, I think we put a copy of our survey in. In addition, there was a link to complete, which actually takes about 5 minutes. So nobody will notice if you quietly open up that survey, but we'll have some conversation on that a little bit later. So we'll do the online survey first. We'll open that immediately. Let people start getting their thoughts in. When we return in January, Nairi's been kind enough. She's got probably the biggest job in this initial section of start lining up all those stakeholders. Mike and I will come into the district. We'll meet face-to-face with groups that are here and available. Often that includes your district office staff, your administrative team, your teachers associations and classified associations. All of those, the community outreach focus on 3 questions. What do you feel like the strengths of the district are? Why would a superintendent be drawn? We're marketing you out there. What is appealing about La Cañada? What do you love? Second one, what do you think the challenges or issues are that a superintendent should be aware of if they're going to take over this district? And the third is, so describe what you think the perfect ideal candidate would be to predict success. What qualities, characteristics, experience, kind of draw us a word picture. The survey goes deeper and gives people options and choices and rank orders, but it basically hits on those. And we're looking for themes and trends across all groups. All of the processes I've just described to you are confidential. We're often asked in the online survey. People get very little paranoid about things like online surveys. On the survey, it says it's anonymous. It indicates the information will not be shared. So I will not be able to tell you other than their demographic, they're a community member or an employee, who it is that's responding. It's completely anonymous, there's an open-ended question at the end, which gives people a chance to kind of get their thoughts in that maybe weren't captured in the survey. All of that raw data will be shared with you exactly as we receive it. It goes to a third-party source. It does not come back here to the district. Your superintendent, your staff, Jamie, none of them will see the results until we prepare them and share them with the board and community. And that comes in the form of a leadership profile. So the leadership profile, we look at if indeed, I believe January 14th is different than the tentative date you were working with. We may have moved that to the 21st. Wendy and I were talking about moving that January date later. Did we move that to the 21st, Nairi, or was it the 14th? Was it the 21st we were talking about?
It is the 21st. Yes, it was the
Okay,
21st that we
thank you.
discussed.
Thank you. I think it has 14th on the draft I gave you because that's right now the meeting. If there's agreement from the board, having that meeting on January 21st would allow us to meet with all those stakeholder groups and we write a narrative leadership profile that we share back with the board for consensus. And that will give us a little more time to collect that data and have a fuller, more reliable report for you.
This is an incremental meeting or just moving that?
It would be moving it.
Because we haven't voted on our calendar for next year, we are the draft calendar had our meeting on the 14th, and the discussion is just to on next week in our meeting move it to the 21st, and then we would line that up. So yeah.
So when the board considers it, I would recommend, if that works for you, that you move that to the 21st, and I know that that would give us adequate time to bring you back a report. That search in addition to opening up the survey, we're ready to immediately push out the job vacancy. And later we'll go over kind of a draft of a narrative that we have that has worked well, that we can certainly customize to meet your specific needs. But this will give you an opportunity for us to get out early in the recruitment window, because come the holidays in January, as I said before, it's Superintendent Hutton season opens up, and we'll know more about who's retiring, who's moving on, and getting out there early is a really good idea because you guys have a very attractive offering here and we want to get the best people in. So the proposal is that we open it by the 13th, maybe even earlier. Been working with Danielle in HR, and she's already on top of things, getting an EdJoin posting out, which is the primary platform for recruitment. She's ready to go live with that, and I would suggest we close it on the 27th. So even though you won't have a leadership profile till the 21st, we would then share that with the candidates as they prepare and as the board reviews and decides who they're going to invite to interview. They would have a leadership profile to help guide their preparation and background. It'll have good information for them. It also gives them a chance to say, I don't think these are issues I'm ready to deal with, if indeed that's the case, and they can withdraw. Yes.
So a leadership profile is not necessary for a job description.
It is not for the job description. In a world perfect timeline, it would be, if we could get everything in, but that would mean holding off your vacancy until a little late. And I think there was a bias toward action. But another option would be not to fly it until after that leadership profile, but that puts you out a little bit in the thick of things, perhaps. So the job posting would close on just kind of continuing to walk through all during that window. As applications come in, your consultants begin vetting them. We do background checks. We call the references they give us. We call references they don't give us through our statewide networks. And we get as clear a picture as where they are. The intense work as we begin sorting out candidates, honestly, the first applicants often aren't. They're the people who are just hitting a push button that puts our applications in everywhere. And very quickly you start sorting out people who really have studied La Cañada and have a know your district, have an interest, from those who are just wallpapering with applications. We wait to do the deep vetting until that leadership profile is done, and we assess the candidates against your priorities and the district's priorities and qualities. And that's how we end up doing that work ongoing. But we are checking references all along. And to know a little bit of how that works in the background, we kind of sort candidates into three groups. Those that appear to have the closest match to what our understanding of the leadership profile is. Those who are a close match, but may have some elements or qualities. Maybe they had a rough experience in the last district. Maybe there's a story in the media that we want to learn more about. They kind of get sorted in the middle. And the last group are those that really aren't qualified or prepared or don't meet the qualities. And we will get people, last one we had an instructional aide apply. And while I'm sure that was a really high quality person, didn't possess any of the qualities or skills, and that happened. So once we complete our vetting, we give the board every single application file, levels 1, 2, and 3, along with our recommendations or our analysis, I should say, and a rationale for our analysis. You'll get that in writing. You'll have a chance to come in, or we will send you virtually based on the board's preference, every single applicant file. You can vet it and look at it. And then we come in and say, okay, who would you like to see? These were the tier ones are the ones we think are probably who you want to see, but it is not unusual for board to say, we're not so interested in this one. Gosh, her salary is out of our reach, whatever her current salary may be. Or we don't understand why she would make this move. But you know what? This one in tier 2 looks interesting. And the board can absolutely, it's your search. We do the initial crunch for you, but we take your direction as to the interviews. And that happens, that'll happen the second week of February. We'll have completed our analysis. We'll get the information to you. We then will have an opportunity to you, and I would suggest a special meeting. So the review of applications is February 3rd through 7th. And then a date I don't have is a special meeting the week of February 10th. And that is the meeting where you've all had a chance to review the applications. You've seen our analysis of candidates. We meet together and we talk it out. Typically, and I don't know that there is a typical, 4 to 6 candidates. It's not unusual to interview 4 to 6 candidates. That's doable in a day for round 1. But we've had boards interview 8 and we've had boards interview 3. So that really comes down to who you see as the right fit and the right match. So if we look at the week of February 10th, I'll be asking Nairi to send you out a Google form or whatever magic you use to do that, to see if we can get a meeting together like this for the sole purpose of confirming our interview slates and affirming our interview questions. Mike and I will draft out interview questions, again, related to your leadership profile and what we've learned about the district that we think are on point. That day, you guys will revise, edit, we'll give them to you ahead of time. We'll come in and we'll finalize them and decide how that interview process will look. And that will happen the week of February 10th. We then notify the candidates invited to interview and notify the candidates who aren't. And hopefully, very often interviews are done on a Saturday, Sunday. That's not required. It's good for candidates who are working folk to be able to make it on a Saturday, Sunday. Round 1 on Saturday, round 2 on Sunday. It also allows it to be, depending on where you hold your interviews, a little more anonymous than walking in the district office on a work day for interviews. Very often, and when we get to the end of logistics, I'll be talking about where you want to hold those interviews, but we have some time on that one. So looking at March 1st and 2nd, does anybody immediately see any conflicts with those dates?
No, sorry, just so that I understand, let's just take a hypothetical. We have 30 applicants. We sort them into a pile of 6 candidates we're interested in. That first round of interviews, that's in person? We do.
Yes.
So we do the whole thing there's not a round of Zoom interviews.
Not
in this
typically.
process.
Not
Okay.
typically, but again, it's your process. If you want to, there are times where they're like initial interviews, or they can do videotape submissions that you can certainly augment the process. I say standard practice is interview questions. It's about an hour for each candidate, about 12 to 15 questions. The questions are posed exactly the same to each candidate, so everyone has the same opportunity. It's not a conversation. You know, it's not a time where you say, tell me a little bit more about that, or it's kind of pretty cut and dried. From that, you determine your finalists, and the next day, on Sunday usually, a half day, you bring back 2, 3, however many finalists the board identifies. That is a conversational interview. In fact, we try to move it to sit around the table or something, so it isn't quite as formal. We even say, you know, you can relax a little bit in your dress. You don't have to wear interview clothes to this one. They just really want to engage. And on that one, the last thing we'll do on Saturday is craft some questions or some ideas for further exploration on Sunday. And they can be completely different. You can approach those interviews. They don't have to be fixed. I saw Joe and then I got Dan.
Do you give the questions ahead of time?
Our practice, unless the board directs otherwise, is we ask them to arrive 15 minutes early. We give them a set of questions for their review 15 minutes before the interview. Then when they come in, the interview is sitting, I mean, the questions are sitting in front of them, which allows them to read and not have to ask you to repeat a question, especially if it's involved. So we typically do 15 minutes beforehand, but not the week before. Unless again,
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Dan, you had a question?
What's your recommendation in your practice on writing samples? Either something they prepared in the past from their career or something that they do on the fly for us?
So there are two ways to approach that, at least two that we've used before. One is it's not unusual in the application window for us to ask for a couple of 200, 300 word essay questions. It does a couple things. That instructional aid maybe isn't quite so likely to submit if they have to write an essay, and that kind of helps them understand the complexities of the job. And it'll narrow the candidate field a bit to people who are serious, who will fill out that. So that's one, and it gives you a chance to see how they write prepared. The other is to actually have a writing sample the day of the interview. They'll complete the one-on-one engagement. They go to a different room. We give them a prompt that we would be glad to give you several prompts to choose from, at which point at the end of the day, we could give those to you. And that would be one of the factors we could look at together before we decide who to invite back for round two.
I would say that actually is my preference. I mean, I like the idea of submitting writing samples, but I think based on, our some of Wendy's skill set that we, we'll talk about, but the idea of writing under pressure and writing to a prompt is
Okay, and have them complete that the day of round one, a live prompt as opposed to a prep.
Also, if we could, I'd also like to see something that they send out to a wide spectrum of their community, just to see what tone they use, if they're sending out something that's sort of a mass email or situation where we can sort of judge what their tone would be with a wide audience.
But that could be something they include in the application.
Right.
Like
Just going to say that can be added into our EdJoin posting. Right now, all it is 3 letters, 3 to 5 letters of recommendation, a resume, a letter of introduction. They self-introduce, and we can add 2 work products, written work products of your that you authored on a subject of your choice, and just have them submit. Now, of course, we don't know who wrote what they send us. I mean, but it gives you an idea if they recognize a good sample and could select something from you that's decent. So
Can I ask?
So if it's something that went out to a wide audience, but kind of think what would be useful.
Can I ask, given the possibility of doing a search that could be statewide or national and the timeline? So do we bring in these candidates and ask them to hold Saturday and Sunday, and then do we release candidates after day one, or
when they apply, we typically put, if the board has agreed, the interview date so they can arrange their calendar in advance. No matter where they are, if they're serious about it, they'll hold those dates. And then when the board decides who they're going to interview in February, we notify those who are being interviewed and release those who aren't.
and then what about after day one? Do we release?
Yes. And by the way, and that's a really good point. We're the front porch for the school board in this. We're your ambassadors. One of the things that we share in our proposal is the care we take with our candidates. Because remember, this isn't the only search we'll do, and there'll be people in this search that we want to engage and really see and have good relationship with, because we may bring them forward if they're not a fit here elsewhere. So the care we take with debriefing with candidates, very often they'll call and say, can we schedule a point, when the dust settles on this, and can you give me some feedback? We take notes while you guys are interviewing on both topics that concern us or interest, or things that we think would be good feedback for them, so we can give them meaningful feedback. And so we're very prompt in that response. We don't keep people hanging and wondering what happened. Let me go to Dan first and then Joe. We have not had travel expenses, nor do most. I'll tell you, a difference would be, this is unforeseen, but let's say you got through your first weekend, 1 and 2. The reason that they're connected is round 2, they don't have to make a second trip out. It's, if they are traveling. The other piece is, if for whatever reason the board says, we're just not ready, we want to see these last 2 one more time, I would suggest then we reimburse travel if someone's traveling beyond that which is they expected to travel. We've not done that. It's been pretty much a candidate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I agree.
well, I'll tell you, it's interesting. Most boards say, are we getting a national audience? Are we applying nationally? The answer is yes. The EdJoin platforms, any platforms on the internet now, they're international. I mean, people who are interested in California superintendents go to two sources. EdCal, which is ACSA, the professional organization, where there will be an ad in a career center location, and EdJoin, which is a national platform. So they can query and do their searching. I want to know about California superintendents, Southern California opportunities. So these are people seeking here. If we ever had what we thought was a hot prospect, a tier one, who said, I really can't do this, unless I get some help, I would let the board know that and give the board the discretion of that consideration. It hasn't happened, but
Yeah,
it could.
interestingly, I did not think that we would be paying for anyone's travel expenses, especially for the first round, because you're choosing to apply. We're not asking you to apply. Right? So
Right.
See that? I think that's a key,
Depends.
Joe. If you doing it through corporate, it is a bit of a different market.
But I've also seen it at the I've seen it at the university level as well. Like,
Yes, and I think private schools also might,
That could be.
private K through 12.
Yeah, I think the big split is whether you have background, private or public. If you're corporate world, it pays for government world, you don't get paid for mix the parents.
But I'll tell you, what I think I'm hearing maybe is that when we have that meeting, when you guys identify, if you have somebody in Hawaii who's an interesting candidate, we're going to talk about that and find out what the boards, we aren't going to discount automatically.
If someone raises that it can, and you can bring to us, we can say, well, this looks strong enough that we really do want to invest in it about that kind of stuff. We could like that. I just don't feel comfortable saying we're not. I mean, our objective here, investing in a search firm, is to find the best, and if we're getting hung up on, the Southwest might for $150.
wasn't disagreeing, was more like in my head. I didn't really think we would, but.
And I
of
will say,
course.
on the application, we will not mention any reimbursement or non-reimbursement for travel. That'll just be open-ended. If a candidate raises that with us, that would be a conversation we'd say we'd have to have with the board. We wouldn't necessarily front load that.
Right.
Also, these are candidates who want a job. So I think if they come and then we get a reimbursement set of receipts for 4 steak dinners and a trip to Disneyland, they're probably going to take themselves out of the running already. So I would hope that our candidates are wiser than that. And if they're not, then excellent vetting that we've done.
But you could put a cap. If we choose, let's say we got to the point where there was somebody we said, yes, we'd say our reasonable fare, transportation, and a stipend of that's per meal. And you put that cap on it if we say we're going to let them travel. But
Can I just say, I think, and just to be this person, I think we should use our microphones when we talk, just because we are broadcasting. So,
Sorry, I thought mine was on.
can I do a second question? Oh, sorry, still related?
No, if it's related, I actually need to go back one step, but go ahead.
No, mine's not. I have a different
Oh,
question.
my apologies. Activation phase, the recruitment process. Can you describe what networks you reach out to? Because in 2024,
How do we cast that net? So I mentioned briefly the two primaries, that
Right.
where 98% of our candidates will come from the EdJoin platform.
Right.
That's where they'll come across your search, and through ACSA as a career center. We also, that we are have an affiliation with Atkinson, Allison, Lawyer, Rudin, Romo, who's a law firm, the largest law firm doing ed law in California. We have a network of attorneys. We cast out our net through our internal network and say, of any hot prospects who might be a good fit for La Cañada, we get some referrals that way. In addition, we have a network of candidates. As I mentioned, we do a dozen searches a year. And so we have candidates who are already reaching out to us who may have interviewed in Hermosa Beach or El Segundo, some of our recent searches, who are kind of in your wheelhouse area, who will be interested. If they don't reach out to us, if we think they'd be a good fit, we'll be reaching out to them. Beyond that, we found that has been adequate. I would imagine you'll get 25 to 30 applicants. That's my early prediction. I'm willing to take on a $1 over under bet from any of you on that, because it's You never know how it's going to go, but I'd say about 25.
There are specific groups, administrators of different identity backgrounds, and just wondering if any of those show up on your. Mind
For superintendent of schools, if the board has a specific group agency, maybe it's an affiliation group or a particular demographic group. AXA's benefit is they have a ton of subgroups, Pacific Islanders, women administrators, every subgroup in the world gets that advertisement. And so we've been able to assemble a pretty diverse array, but we are happy to send it out to any other groups. The time, Octavia, that we've done is when I'm doing a specialty superintendent, like for a SELPA or for an ROP, then I'll go through their network of statewide members, because that's really specific to a pool, and I want to make sure I can do direct email to those folks. So if you have any affinity groups, I'm happy to push the opportunity out, a flyer opportunity out to any group. Yes, Joe.
The question I had kind of built on the writing sample, but any discussion or experience you have with doing a quick speaking sample?
Well, you'll be interviewing them.
Well, obviously casually, but getting up in front, people have different skill sets with presenting or reading, or do they look at the crowd? Are they warm? Are they confident? I just ask if that's been ever included.
Our standard practice is an interview, as the interview opens with a 10-minute presentation they give to the board based on a prompt the board develops that they don't receive, or that they do receive ahead of time because they can prepare.
That's fine. That works.
Yeah. And so we will give you some prompts. So what I'm hearing on that selection process, and you guys are, by the way, you're moving great, is I'm going to create and send some writing samples that will be for the initial application that they're going to collect some writing samples, some authentic artifacts, if you will, as part of their initial submission. Then further, that I'm going to send you, that when we get to that point where we're going to develop the interview questions, we'll include some writing prompt options for the board. You can create your own or modify one that we bring you. So that's two pieces. The third is we will bring you a prompt for a 10-minute presentation typically. And they are allowed to send us, like the Thursday before the weekend, they send us so we can make sure everything's locked and loaded with Jamie. And they open the interview with 10 minutes, which is a great way for them to have some autonomy. All of you have been in an interview room, I suspect, and it's like the most helpless feeling. Coming in and presenting your information initially is a great way to kind of get your feet on the ground, and then sit down, and then the interview actually starts. So that's our typical process.
Can I, sorry.
And maybe even add to that, I get where Joe's coming from, but that'll necessarily be in closed session. So I don't know if you can change the dynamics at all. Obviously, you can't do it in open because then the candidates are public. But is it possible to ask them to submit a video of some public presentation? I know a lot of boards currently, do have everything streamed. Is there any way to ask people to submit a short video of something that they've done?
Yes, there's a way to do just about anything. A typical prompt the board uses in that interview is to not address the board, but you're at a community forum introducing yourself to your stakeholders. You have 10 minutes to share your vision and what brought you to Locken, something along those lines. I'm hearing maybe a piece. We talked about sending in a writing sample or an exemplar of their work. I'm hearing you saying maybe is there an exemplar video of something they could send in?
Maybe make it optional. So if they want to do the work and they're confident that's a differentiator for them, they can send it.
Or they can send a link to a board meeting that was specific. They've stood up, they were speaking on a particular topic.
Okay. I think that would be where they're addressing a live
With a
audience
timestamp.
that's in real time, not knowing what's going on, responding to whatever kind of questions or whatever they're doing as a presentation would be.
I think it's really powerful separator for folks. Like, how do they respond? Do they collect their thoughts? Do they have how they handle objections or feedback? And do they repeat the question so they give themselves more time to answer clearly? How articulate? I mean, those are things that we've come to appreciate and recognize in our current superintendent, the disposition, how she handles stress, difficult things. And that's in this community, in our community in particular, you have a lot of accomplished individuals who expect clear communication and an ability to handle tough situations.
So let's keep talking because I want to get a clear picture and I want to make sure if I see any obstacles, I share them with you. we do want to get a wide array of candidates for you to look at. I get a little concerned the more we put in the front end of, we want 3 letters, we want a link to a video, we want to see your work, we want to, are there people who will look at that and say, boy, that's probing a little deep for, I haven't even gotten invited to an interview. Is that something we do later when we invite the 6 finalists? Let's say you identify them. Is at
Yeah.
that point, say, we'd love to see, can you send us a bit of your work, an exemplar? Maybe there's a way to
'Cause
get
then
them
they're
in the
invested. Yeah.
application
That makes
window
more sense.
That's fine.
first.
That's fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I think that's good.
I also think, I mean, we are going to be picking candidates who have a fair bit of experience in the field. And I would assume that with a little bit of due diligence, given the internet, that we probably could
To find
find
on our own.
video
Precisely.
I was thinking.
on nearly everyone.
And we can curate that for you, Josh. For those of you that
Maybe
don't,
that's a way.
we can
That-
look and say, here's a board meeting we saw that we think will
Yes,
give you a
yeah.
good
yes.
look at how he handled or she handled a controversial
Yep.
community
Yep.
meeting.
Because I agree with you. I think the number one most important thing is that we get the most qualified candidates to apply, and that we are picking from the best people. And I think that sometimes applications become, especially if you're applying to a lot of places, that applications can become so onerous that they actually are limiting,
Right.
and we don't
Yep.
want to do that.
Good point.
So that's clear. So I will be taking the information in my notes and I'll be conferring with my absent friend and follow up by the end of the week with an email to you of what I understood the takeaways today were. You'll have our number and direct access to call us as individuals and say, that's not what I understood, or that sounds great, or whatever. Moving on then. So we have that second interview and you find your unicorn. It's going to be, you got some heavy shoes to fill in this job. So, but you come away and there's a 5-0 support for a candidate. What happens next? Well, first, let's go with what happens if it doesn't. What happens in 30 searches I've done, twice, the board has just come away saying, you know what? Not quite sure we got it. There are a couple ways. One of the boards, it was really more an internal dynamic than it was quality of candidates. There was a split. So they said, let's do a round 3. And you know what? That took care of it. By the end of round 3, something happened in that dynamic. It resolved. And
They're not going back out again. It's another iteration with the same group of candidates. Yeah.
Now you could go back out again. In this case, it really wasn't the quality. They didn't think if we flew it, we get somebody better.
Yeah, exactly.
They just said we were disagreeing on which one is the right fit, but we like both these folks. Another situation, they had, it was an ROP, it wasn't a standard district. They had directed us to set a bar that we didn't think was competitive in salary. And we shared that and we opened it. And sure enough, the people that came forward really didn't meet their standard, but we had met somebody during that search who was very interested, but was making more than they were paying in her current job. So we said, here's an option. What if we invite in this candidate? Would the board like a one-on-one to see what a few dollars will buy you? If you're willing to unclench and look at this salary. They interviewed her, and by the end of that interview, she left and they said, yeah, we get it. We've never had to refly or start over, but there's a first time for everything. And if that is the case, we're committed to see this through to a successful completion. So your candidate is selected. What happens next? The board, typically, it's often the board president. Sometimes it's a designee of the board president, will enter into negotiations with your district's attorney. So we do not get involved in negotiating the contract. We're kind of Switzerland in this situation because we're working with the candidate, we're working with the board. This is where the board president, your attorney, and the candidate, who will very likely seek an advocate to work with them, not necessarily with the board, but I mentioned to a couple of you, I work for AXA when I'm not doing searches. I'm that guy sometimes that they'll say, can you do a review? This is a contract that La Cañada submitted. Is there anything in there I should be concerned about or something missing? I assist them. They then go back and negotiate with the board president and you finalize a contract that typically takes a week or 10 days, depending on usually the attorney's schedule, if they can work it in. So you have a nice big window between that weekend and the board meeting, should the board meeting indeed be on the 25th, to finalize that contract. When does it get announced? There's board discretion in that. The biggest challenge in these searches is the informal communication network, in that people will assume and announce, and it's going to be so-and-so, and it's not going to be so. And you'll be calling me saying, Gary, there's this wild rumor out there flying that we're bringing in, fill in the blank. So very often boards will announce after their selection, usually give it a couple days to make sure the contracts are going to work out, that there's no big disagreement. It's just language details. Then you'll put out saying pending board approval at the regularly scheduled meeting on October 25th, the board has identified so-and-so as their preferred finalist. So you're not taking action inappropriately, but you're announcing it, which is really kind of a relief. We coordinate that with the incoming candidate because obviously he or she will want to coordinate that in their current district, who may be unaware, depending on the relationship with their board and with the community that they're in this process. We coordinate that, and very often before action, the name goes out. The board, we've also had boards that say, no, we want to take action that night. We'll have the press release locked and loaded and shoot it out. You know, Nairi will be sitting here, and the minute you vote, she'll push the button and out goes the announcement. Both of those are appropriate.
Maybe you can talk a little bit more about confidentiality. I know our confidentiality agreement that you had us sign talks about not disclosing who the applicants are and things like that. I think there's a lot that our community would piece together just with little bits of information. We have one of these communities that will play guessing games. And for instance, if the community knows that we had 5 outside candidates or 2 internal candidates or 4 people we called back, that will start a guessing game as to who those people are and what their rankings are and all that. So I think we need to, as a board, not discuss the process whatsoever.
So that's a great clarification. The only way they would know if you're inviting back inside candidates out or that they've even applied would be if a board disclosed that, a board member. Otherwise, they will make stuff up. That is, just get ready for that. It'll be absolute. They heard it from a source. It's definite that so-and-so's in or so-and-so's out. All you can do is not respond to that and refer them to us when we won't disclose. We'll just remind them it's a confidential process. Do you have any concerns, or are you calling me to advocate for somebody? I'm very happy to, they want to tell me, boy, you really need to select so-and-so. I'll take that information and thank them. They don't need to know if that person's even applied or not. But I do agree. It's the unintentional slips, Dan. No board member goes out there thinking I'm going to violate this. But somebody stops you and it's your best friend and they're not going to tell anybody, and you say, yeah, we've got 6 great candidates we're interviewing. That then sadly will travel like wildfire. So just having that blanket statement and the tight lip will be your best friend in this process. But then don't be surprised if people make things up about.
I guess the other side of the coin is, will candidates themselves go public that they've applied, that they made it to the finals? And what, if anything, can you do about that? Because there is no confidentiality agreement that they're signing.
That's a really good point. They can do that. It's risky. It's not smart. It's not savvy to do that. But remember, they're collecting letters of recommendation. So just by doing that, and often a good candidate, or not, I shouldn't say good candidate, many candidates will want it specific to La Cañada. Would you write me a letter specific to this opportunity? I want the board to know I'm not seeking every job, and this is the same letter I've sent to everybody. So on their end, they're going to have to open up that and be a little more trusting. But I would say there's little to nothing you can do about that other than just be aware of it. People may know from a candidate that they're interviewing. They may be calling a trusted friend to help them prepare for the interview. They may call a colleague they know that works in your district. They're not prohibited from. Wendy will, at some point, we'll ask Wendy, are you open once it gets to finalists, not in the initial phase? Say, are you open to the finalists contacting you if they have any questions as they prepare? And that'll be up to Wendy. If she's open to that, if the board's okay with that, the candidate can call and ask clarifying questions.
Yeah, I think that's probably really critical, because the one thing that people applying might not realize is that Wendy has a 24/7 job. It's, she's a fucking bottle washer and does everything for our district because she really has no staff. I mean, she obviously has a cabinet, but we're not a district that has lots of administrative staff. So anyone who's seriously considering applying for the job needs to understand, probably the best one to tell them that is Wendy, that it is a 24/7 job.
I will tell you this, the candidates that are qualified, those tier 1 candidates, absolutely know that. They know the size of the district. They've done their research. They've looked at your org chart. Your staffing for a district this size is not unusual. It isn't that you're wildly understaffed. I mean, you can always use about 20 more people and they'd all be busy. But I think that they're going to understand when you're applying. I was a superintendent of a district of 5,000, superintendent one of 30,000. I worked a lot harder when it was 5,000. a lot. I mean, I had a lot, I was doing the spelling guide, curriculum. It's different, and candidates will know that and be prepared for that. And you're right, Wendy can also put some meat on the bones for that and make sure that they're aware.
Does anybody have an issue with candidates reaching out to Wendy? Time a lot. Wendy's gonna have to be your own governor in terms of, hey, you get one conversation, you'll get 5.
Yeah, no,
And
I think Wendy would handle it well.
Yeah.
And it's not till the.
It's not till the
later round
last
anyway.
phase. We
Yeah,
would not
so
make
it's
that
not
available. In fact, I would
30
tell
people,
Wendy,
it's-
don't accept calls from people just
Right.
how
casting
often
their
do you do
net.
this?
This
How
would-
often is this engaged or this approach? How often does this?
Most every search.
Does,
Yeah, there are situations where the superintendent's not in good standing, in which case the
Big
board
time.
would
That would be
say
a no.
Yeah.
that would be a no. So
Yeah.
it's a positive sign usually that a superintendent is, you can reach out to a suit.
did those
Yeah, yeah.
conversations with Wendy, then what is our obligation to talk to Wendy about those conversations and her obligation to talk to us? I mean, if she has a conversation and I mean, this search is unique, not unique. We have a great relationship with Wendy. We trust her. She has been, an advocate for, and will continue to be an advocate for whoever steps in to replace her. And so I guess the question is that a tool, or do we make a
I
point
would
of not
say
being a tool?
That's our job. So Wendy, one of the things we will do first off, we'll make that offer. 2 of the 6 may call. The other 4 may feel like, I think I have adequate information. I've done my research. I know the district. So you may only get feedback on a couple of candidates. We would debrief with Wendy, and we will along the way. By the way, Wendy, Nairi, Jamie, Danielle are all signing confidentiality agreements too, because there may be points along this where even unintentionally, a candidate reaches out to them.
Yeah. Rude in terms of demand.
Or ask dumb questions. Sometimes I've had a superintendent say, they ask some very naive questions. I don't think they did any homework by the time they call me. I would expect if I was going to call a superintendent, I would be very specific with my questions and show that I'd done a lot of homework before I took their time to ask. Wendy can give me that kind of information, which I will share with the board, or it could even change our recommendation on a candidate. We've had situations where the board has invited 6. We've come back and said, you know what, a press release just broke, or we just had a piece of information. We're going to suggest we withdraw a candidate from contention. It's rare, but if it happens, we certainly aren't going to keep that quiet, because it's going to affect your ultimate decision. How are we doing? We're doing great. You guys actually have jumped in the inside you have I already shared the link to the survey. There is kind of a boilerplate ad. It's the one that looks like this. The blurb Wendy shared with me, and it's kind of your standard description of the district.
Yeah.
I then took the opportunity and set some qualities that are pretty much industry standard. But if there's anything missing in that list or anything that you don't think is descriptive, this would be the time to tell us what to add or what to take out or what to monkey with in terms of qualifications. The next page, I do want to talk about qualifications and experience. Because these sometimes boards have some boards say we only want somebody with a doctorate, or they'll say, yeah, we don't want them. They don't necessarily have to have a smaller district. We wouldn't put in there 3 to 5 years of senior experience. A district your size, my recommendation would be that you say we prefer or require 3 to 5 years of proven track record success as a cabinet level official, assistant soup or soup. On this draft, I put the word preferred. We can certainly change that to required or eliminate it altogether if the board doesn't have that preference.
Are we looking at your survey now? Is that what we're talking about?
No, I'm
Yeah, we're-
sorry. I kind of jumped around on you
Okay.
there.
Looking at this.
I'm on the ad
Yeah.
text. It looks like this, Dan.
The second
Okay.
page.
And can I ask, in terms of credentialing for superintendent, is there any reason to include anything about credentialing? Is there an opportunity? Is there a situation where we could hire someone who is not credentialed who would then have to work towards a credential, or is it the general?
So here's a strange thing about the superintendent. It does not require a credential,
Right.
although 99% of them have one. You can hire a
Now-
retired Army general, and districts have. Typically, those are places like LA Unified, where it really is more about a bureaucracy than the
Mhm.
than an educational leader that you would expect here. The only reason we don't often say administrative services required is that sometimes there are really qualified CBOs. People have, people who have come up and the board can always screen out if you say their experience isn't a fit, or we have other qualified candidates who have administrative credentials. But you can have a person that came up in the classified ranks, has been a gifted business official in the district, who also has instructional leadership that would be preempted if it was required. But I will tell you, that's rare. The majority of candidates will be traditionally prepared. If they're from out of state, there'll be an expectation they seek their certification. Most of them will do that before they apply. So they're ready to go if they get the job.
So how do you want to step through feedback? Do you want
So
the
let's
feedback
start.
on the ad real quick, or how do you want to?
Let's do that. Let's go to the first page. The blurb is yours, unless you have anything to change there. The next part is the opportunity, and this just describes in general the qualities and characteristics of a superintendent. If there are any
I just
feedback
had
on that.
one little minor, collaboration with other agencies like their city. So we have a joint use arrangement. We have quite an interaction with them, sheriffs, budgeting, things like that, traffic. So just some nod to that. It talks about greater community and develop and maintain positive relationships with employee associations. Maybe that's employee associations, city officials. Where can we build that in a little bit? Because that is real and it's created some pressure and stressors over the years.
So collaboration with community agencies, nonprofits, other groups that serve students.
Even if it's, yeah,
Huh.
open-ended like
But
that.
it's actually
Okay.
true, yeah.
Yeah, like a little.
The foundation too, and yeah.
Service clubs, et cetera. Okay. Is there a general agreement to add a bullet around being the convener or connecting with those groups? Okay, we can definitely pull that together. Other things, other bullets under the opportunity.
How does would a candidate, I would assume, do their own research on the deeper demographics of our district, really understanding our makeup?
There'll be a couple opportunities for them to do that. First off, yes, the qualified candidate will definitely research the district as they prepare for the interview. Our leadership profile will share information very specific to your community once that's compiled, and they'll have that prior to the interview.
Got it.
One of the things we tell them in preparing is, you'll very likely be asked a question like, you've had a chance to study our district. What have you learned about our, and there are people who come in cold. You think, I don't think they could pick out La Cañada on a map, and they're here interviewing, and others who come in who you will learn things about your district during the interview because they've probed so deeply. They'll say something like, you have your one-on-one aid ratio is a little out of line, and you kind of go, it is really, but they've studied it and they'll come back. So the good candidates will definitely do their research.
Yeah.
And we'll encourage them to do that.
I think I'm just saying, I'm bringing that up because in the description, we are, I don't know, we just have a particular
Right.
dynamic.
So I know a couple of
It's not
candidates who
there.
already called me and I said, I'm going to send you the description. Call me back and tell me if this is your community. And both said, nope, not my community. One of them really has a heart for serving very diverse, underperforming urban districts. And that's a great calling. Probably not the right calling if that's where her heart is for La Cañada. So, part of their screening process to apply should be on if they can navigate in this type
Totally
of community, which is very different from, every district's different.
I think the other thing that I noticed from both the opportunity, but also from the survey is I would like to see something in either or both about our wellness plans. Our district has a lot of
Yeah.
opportunity for wellness. Yeah, and I don't see we've really touched on that. So maybe even under what the community is looking for in a superintendent, a focus on wellness.
I was going to say that would be the natural fit. If we either under the opportunity as a bullet or make sure that that is really clearly explained in your job, in your description of the district.
Yeah, I think it's in the because right here you talk about positive behavior interventions. We know inside of that are things like wellness centers and all the other things, but maybe we need to pull that.
Flesh that out a little bit.
Yeah, and I think,
Focus is real.
and I think especially for the survey to the community asking what's important in a
Yeah.
superintendent, is it important to you that the superintendent focus on wellness?
The only thing about,
Don't forget that when we talk about survey. I think it's a good call.
the only thing about that is this block of information about the district itself is just that it is a dense block of information. And I don't know, like if we want to attract candidates who are interested in wellness, I think the bullet points is
A better
a
place.
clearer way
Okay.
to get them focused on that, then it could easily be overlooked here in the
And
blog.
let's add it to a bullet. Either place will work fine. We'll just call it out of able to maintain and grow the wellness support systems in place.
Yeah, that's-
Unique. We can come up with something.
And
And getting back to your point about, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
oh, no, I was just going to say the other thing that I had flagged, and we already talked about it, but just to point it out here, is that in the application requirements, we would add a writing sample into the
Yes.
list of application requirements.
It wasn't a writing sample, it was a writing artifact,
Oh,
right? Am I right? It wasn't that they wrote something originally, but they pulled something that they had.
Because they're not writing for us until,
No.
No, maybe I
Some sort of
misunderstood.
written document, some
Previous written.
yeah,
previous written
Yeah.
statement.
So under application requirements, I am going to add that they submit a sample of their writing where they're engaging a larger audience.
Yes, exactly.
A real writing, not
Yes.
just something they're creating for the purpose.
Yep.
The other thing you touched on a little bit is that our district, while very high performing, and I think a lot of our community expects that, they expect very high performing academics. We also do have to, and we want our superintendent to also focus on the students who need more support in learning and the middle students. And so I think that's, and I'm not sure how you get to it on that, but that even though we are a very high performing district and we want to continue that, we also need to make sure we're focusing on all the students. It sounds more
So-
like a platitude than a question.
No. The interview, I think, is the place where you go deep on that because it'd be unusual district that would say, we're really not interested in these students, we're more interested in those, right? So it almost goes without saying. But in the interview, I think authentic questions around, talk to us about an initiative you've used and talk to us about the results for your highest performing students. Okay, now share with us for your struggling students. What have you seen to be successful and important? What have you led? And I think that comes out in the interview, probably more than as a screening tool. So we've got some revisions let's go back up to the top of that. And we started that a bit. Our qualifications and experience. A seasoned leader, proven track record of success, 3 to 5 years of central office executive level preferred or required, depending on board preference.
What do you mean by central office executive?
Cabinet level, and we can change that to cabinet level, which would be assistant superintendent or superintendent. Occasionally, we'll get an executive director who's a member of cabinet. Districts sometimes name their positions differently. And so we will call part of our vetting is to say, okay, is this person really in charge of that division? Are they a part of your superintendent's cabinet? And we'll make the decision and say to the board, yeah, this person doesn't have that title, but their duty is executive level. That's a challenge with different titles.
Yeah, I think cabinet is probably what we're looking at, but probably also open to if there's an equivalent, like cabinet level or equivalent.
Okay.
I'm not sure what central office means to people.
But it might help us too, because I agree that cabinet in most districts might be one thing, but if you come from a giant district and you're super talented, you might not technically be on cabinet, but you're an executive
Right.
level person.
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you allow for that to come in and not exclude it? But maybe it's not central office, but executive level administrative role with the district.
And I have cabinet level or equivalent. Very often in smaller districts, especially, they'll have an assistant soup who's called an executive director, but every bit of their duty and function falls completely as we will screen that person in and tell you why. Because they are in charge of the division. They just have a district that politically they don't want another assistant.
But so
soup.
Dan, you just, if we took out the central office part and reframe that a little bit,
Yeah, or I think Gary was suggesting cabinet level or equivalent.
or equivalent, I'm good with
Yeah,
that.
I mean, just to show that it's open, but it just.
Required or preferred?
What's that?
Required or preferred? We
I
can,
think preferred.
okay. Gives us that window. I think that helps them understand that that's going to be the gold standard in
I
selection.
guess the only thing I'd flagged, and I guess we already took care of it, is the C in central doesn't really need to be capitalized. So,
I think we got rid of it.
We're
So,
getting rid of it.
yeah, we're getting rid of the word, so it's all right.
Yeah, thank you.
I prefer, in general, I think to find verbiage that'll that'll attract more candidates instead of limit candidates, because one of the things that we often find, especially when we are dealing with um some subsets of the applicant pool, is that some people will not apply unless they meet the exact requirements, and some people will take these as suggestions and apply. And I think we want to get all of those people to apply. So I like preferred rather than required. And I
Keep that door open. Yeah.
Well, then Gary has to do, which is great. We'll get more applications and have Mike and Gary have to go through more.
You know, it's going to be interesting, and that's fine. I'd much rather have that than have a
Agreed.
shallow pool from
Yeah.
which to choose. I will tell you that it's going to be the unusual candidate that doesn't understand this is going to take some high-level executive skills to navigate La Cañada, right? This isn't a starter district for most folk. They need to have some real skills and background in this atmosphere to be successful. And I think you're going to draw candidates who have that level of confidence and background. And if not, we will let you know. We'll find out. Go ahead.
Looking at qualifying, I just don't feel like this is meaty enough. And I'm not sure if are we changing that right now, or is this a work in progress until we fly it just before?
So what I'm going to do today
Mhm.
is modify this. Mike, I hope you've been listening and taking notes at home, because he and I are going to be collaborating
Sure.
this afternoon,
Right.
and send you out a draft with revisions this afternoon.
What part, I mean, when you say meeting enough, what section, is there a particular part that's
The
called?
qualifications and experience, the expectations,
light.
the professional expectations, the personal expectations. I feel like there is room for a lot more, just to say what we're looking for.
There is. And I don't know that we can that could be pages of documents. It can be this gives them a general sense of the prerequisite experiences that are expected by the board. So what prerequisite kinds of, because you're right, there's a ton more things, like can lead special ed, there's a lot of things that won't make it onto this, but what are some prerequisite screening things that a candidate will want to know if they should put their hat in the ring or not?
I just think, having gone through this a few times in some different fields, I just feel like our goal is to get people through the door so that we can make decisions. And as we start to build this out to to a level that is so thorough that people start eliminating themselves, potentially qualified people, it makes me nervous. Like, I'd rather see this stay more general and generic.
I think I've seen
It is short.
teaching position descriptions more abundant in there.
Well, maybe this will address it. I don't know if you have a current job description for a superintendent that's been revisited. Most districts don't, especially if you had a superintendent for 14 years. Sometimes we'll attach a link to that, which spells out all of the things, mobility expectations, ability to drive, all those kinds of standard expectations.
Would that help if there is? I mean, I thought we have gone through job descriptions, but maybe everybody but superintendent, because Wendy's led that charge to make sure everything subordinate to her is covered, but maybe hers we haven't looked at recently.
How about I'll research that, and if there is one, we'll link to it.
Link to it help? Is that helpful?
It would give.
I think it works.
Is there a couple things, think about it.
I have seen other examples of their work, and I feel like it could be
like more competencies call out. Is there more like skill set, mindset? What's the pieces?
Well, I know that there was a description written out for William S. Hart.
Oh, okay.
And it described the professional competencies, the personal competencies. And I just thought it was meatier. I mean, I've applied for teaching positions that have had more abundant list of,
but I guess
what we're looking for.
But to what upside? I guess that's the question, is like, what is the goal with making it more
I
meaningful?
suppose part of it is that it's like a working document, that it's almost like a job description that we can refer to down the road but
I'm not opposed to it. I'm just trying to get to because
I can go either way. I'm just wondering why it's
well, here's as I hear both of you. If our main get people in the door, you're going to start the funnel wide.
Yeah.
Our own process will tease out the stuff that we really think is important in our blueprint and so we will be able to knock a lot of people out and be very discriminatory, what's my word I'm missing, but how do you
Refine,
tighten that down?
refine, yes.
I'm wondering
We
if,
will only find someone with the competencies that you're happy with through this iterative process, right?
I'm wondering if the problem is the title. As though this is an extensive qualifications and experience. This is kind of a prerequisite or an essential. Like, if you're going to apply, you really need to have some cabinet level executive track record to show us. You need to have, show us that you've had experiences in all houses of the district in human resource and business, and that you're willing to make a long-term. They're kind of overall general prerequisites, as opposed to an extensive list of qualities and expectations, which that title would suggest.
Yeah, it's not exhaustive. I think to her point, it's not necessarily collectively exhaustive, right? In terms of all the dimensions of a superintendent,
Well,
but you're trying to have it enough of a gate to bring in, keep the funnel wide.
well, as you know, we talked about, it's interesting that you're talking about this, Octavia, because one of the things that is on our list to talk about is community engagement, and also our own process of sort of determining qualifications. And as Gary mentioned, you know, I mean, I think if we started this process 3 months ago and we did that first, we would have a very clear picture of exactly what we want. And
that's why
in the reality,
Yeah.
what's going to happen is that we probably at the end of this process could write the job description really clearly
Yeah.
based on
Especially.
how we chose the person we chose. But for this, I feel like we would be writing it somewhat blind because we haven't done the surveying, we haven't
That's
sort of
right.
done the community, but we will have that information when we go to select who the candidates are.
So in terms of, thank you. In terms of the, these bullets and being short, this is a place where boards sometimes add that unusual prerequisite that applies to them. If you are a district, I haven't heard that you are, that says, you know what, we don't want a person without a doctorate. This is where you say doctorate required. If you say, we only want a person who has successful teaching and principalship experience to be considered as a candidate, this is where you say that. Or you leave it open, to your point of let's see who we assemble and make those decisions in the cuts. But if there is a shared agreement that you really don't want to see a candidate that doesn't have a certain skill, attribute, or experience, this would be the time to bring that in, because it's a screening device.
But I think we do want an alignment process step that says kind of like our own. And you kind of in the survey says, what are your top 5? What are the dimensions that we all are aligning to in terms of that lens to look through when we get to make those decision points, right? So I still think that that's a little bit for me missing. We're like, hey, what are the attributes and to what degree? Like, is it, and the survey had some of it, like I said, but I would love to be calibrated that we're all violently aligned on the top 5 or 6. And so when we get to the point, we're not arguing at the back end because of the candidates in front of us. We clearly understand up front what we're looking for.
But I think in this case, the goal is to not waste anybody's time
Get going.
by having things that we internally have as non-negotiables that aren't listed here, because if they are non-negotiables, then we should put them in. If we want a person who's been a principal and we're going to just immediately X out any
Right.
application that isn't a principal, then we should put it on here. But I
it's
think
concise.
if the discussion comes, you know, that we have internally and through community engagement over the next couple months, is that, you know what, the experience with our educational partners that often looks like being a principal at the site is very valuable, then that's something we will discover and we can prioritize, but it isn't a non-negotiable. Then I don't think we want to put it in, because we may have somebody who appears, you know, who's a fantastic leader and just hasn't been a principal, had jumped up, you know, above. So,
Right.
So
So a
I think-
counselor who went to the district office who, you know. The other piece I'm going to send you as a part of the follow-up from this meeting, I'll send you the leadership profile for the last district we did. It was St. Helena up north. I think, Octavia, you're going to see what you're looking for, because after we collect all this information on qualities and attributes from you, from your stakeholders, from what matters most, we compile that into a document that's 4 or 5 pages. And in that is an exhausted list of unique, specific qualities and characteristics this community is saying is going to be necessary for success. I think it spells it out, and it's very organic. And I think you might see what you're looking for.
Thank you.
You
A
bet.
question about the last one in terms of whether it's a non-negotiable is the person who can make a long-term commitment. I'm not sure what long-term means. To my generation, it means working there 20 years. To Generation X, it means you're going to be there 5 years. And I'm not even sure what we mean as a board because it is likely that we will have candidates who are near the end of their career, who have had a lot of experience, who have, have a lot of qualifications, but they may not be planning to continue in the job for 20 more years or even 10 more years. And I don't know if we as a board mean that if we've got an extremely good candidate who only can give us 5 years, I don't know that it
So
necessarily.
the
to me,
average
only-
superintendent tenure in
2.5.
California is 3 years.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why I'm not sure.
So
what the
5 years is a good run. You guys have an unusual run with 14.
Yeah.
Or being asking out people because they don't understand what long-term means. to them.
Right. It may mean someone might read it and think we want someone who's young who can stay with us another 15 years. And maybe we do, but I don't know I don't know that we disqualify someone.
What if we said an individual could make a meaningful commitment to the district?
I would just get rid of the sentence altogether. I'm not sure what it
Strike it?
stands out for.
You know, when this most comes up, Dan, is in a district who's lost a superintendent after a short tenure, right? They've had somebody that was here 2.5, 3 years
blew
and,
up.
and puddle jumped up.
Yeah.
And they say, we want somebody who's plans on hanging around a while.
What it sounds like is that we don't want someone who's using it as a career step. But I don't think people are going to be looking at this as a
Hey, if
career
you can get
step.
5 years out of a
I don't think
great
that's us.
superintendent and they happen to get a career step, I think you'd all be good with that. I mean,
Yeah.
if you want the best person. Yeah, I think I'm sensing consensus to eliminate this.
Yeah,
Are we good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah, that's good. That was a
Got
good
it.
suggestion.
And again, I'll be sending you a draft, making sure I can weave these thoughts in. We added the writing sample to the application requirements. I think we've agreed on the conceptual dates. And obviously, if the 27th comes and we don't see the outcome of the applicant pool we're seeking, we'll extend that and talk to the board about that. We've got our interview dates tentatively blocked out that we can share with the applicants. And then we have information for how they can reach us. That'll be on both on this form and it'll be shared on your website so that if you're out and about in the community, just direct the person to the website to the superintendent search and our contact information will be there.
Curious about communication. Do you, these are cell phone number? Oh,
That will go on the applicant one. It won't go on your website. Our email addresses will go on your website.
got it. And, okay. Do you receive text? I mean, is it,
Yes. So I personally, Mike and I both are chronic phone checkers to our wives' disgruntlement. So
or is it
yes.
typical for candidates to be also
They will,
communicating? I
sometimes
think?
a candidate will reach out and say, my name is so-and-so, I'm interested in the position. Do you have time to talk with me?
Just
More
curious.
often they'll use the email,
Sure.
but they can certainly call. Some of them will know us
Mhm.
from other searches or other experiences. So I think I have my marching orders to revise this and get it to you today, hopefully capturing what we heard and keeping one eye on the clock. The last one, we really don't have to talk about until later, but I want you to be thinking about logistics. Very often a district will go to a local hotel and have a meeting room for interviews. If it's a Saturday, Sunday, it's certainly fine to have it in the district office. Any place you have your meeting must be posted. An agenda must be posted, even if you're at the Marriott. So it isn't a secret meeting, but sometimes the niceties like breakfast and lunch and refreshments and all can be accommodated at a meeting place. So as the process goes, we'll be talking about those logistics and whether you'd rather do it here or rent a room, in which case we'd want to start scouting.
A question on that. Are you saying that our interviews need to be posted in public?
Yeah. You're not the candidates' names, but it's a regular meeting of the Board of Education. It's just in closed session. So it must be, and even if you're at a hotel, they have to post it in the room, on a stand, or in the lobby anytime the board meets.
It is, in terms of confidentiality, do you understand why a hotel would be nice? Because anybody coming in and out of here on Saturday and Sunday is going to be flagged immediately as
And
a
they'll be
candidate.
dressed in a tie and suit.
If it's a hotel, anyone coming in and out could be anyone, and there's a level of confidentiality.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
something
we'll
like,
have to post the location though. So
yeah, well, if somebody's going to stake it out, but I mean, come on, this isn't.
You know what?
the President of the United
We've-
States, it's.
I shared with the board in our presentation what was probably the most contentious community scrutiny on a superintendent search I've done. And we were prepared to have people hanging in trees with video Nobody
Wow.
showed up. Nobody showed up. It was, that doesn't mean you won't be the first, but it's more of a concern that it turns out to be a lot of people have their Saturdays laid out. Well,
Gary,
that's
I know
okay.
we're a little behind, but are we going to talk about the community engagement worksheet? We sort of discussed it a
Yes,
little bit, but
we are. And actually, you're moving pretty good. An
Oh,
hour,
all right.
pretty
Okay.
ambitious to get this in. So let's go to a couple things. I'm not sure we'll be able to hit the survey to the extent you'd like to. So let's go to the community engagement piece. This is the who. I'd share with you the three big questions. Remember, everybody in the community is going to get the survey. So 100% of your community has the opportunity to have their voice be heard. Beyond that, we typically meet one-on-one with the superintendent, cabinet members, and the executive assistant to the superintendent. Even if they're candidates, we don't meet with them to talk about their candidacy. We meet with them to ask these three essential questions. The smart internal candidate will say, what qualities? Well, somebody just like me. Perfect. Then we do focus groups. And we've already, I know that Nairi has been assembling some, seeing if we can tap into meetings they already have. Like I think your community, what was the one group you connected me with? The PTA executive happened to have a meeting that fell within, generally within that window. And I asked if can I zoom in or join that meeting to get some information. We meet with your district office administrators, your staff, your site administrators in focus groups. In those meetings, in addition to asking the questions, we give out our contact information and say, if there's anything sensitive or uncomfortable you didn't want to mention in this meeting, please reach out to us. We'll keep that confidential, but we want to hear from you. And very often they will. We'll hear from folks. Your parent leaders, affiliation organizations like your Ed Foundation, District Advisory, sometimes we'll do a Zoom and invite all those people to one room. Other times we'll have again, if they have a meeting they'd like us to tap into, and they'll give us 25, 30 minutes of their meeting, we'll join them at that meeting. And then my favorite part is meeting with your high school ASB or affinity groups. Those are always really interesting. And so we'll have probably a visit out to your high school and meet with some folks. Am I right? You guys don't have do you have a continuation high school?
No.
No.
No. So we'll be meeting at your comprehensive high school. We schedule a community forum. Come one, come all. It can be employees. It can be everybody. By the way, we recommend strongly board members do not attend those. It changes the climate in the room.
Any of these, right?
Any of those.
Right.
It would be our suggestion if you advocate for different, but in general, good practice, it just changes the conversation when you're there. And we can meet with your community in a forum, however, whatever they're typically interested in. It can be 6 o'clock in the evening in the high school library. And we'll engage community there. If you feel like online is better, we use a platform called Padlet, which is we have a producer that comes in and does it with us, and every participant can answer the questions, and little Post-it notes come up on the screen, and they kind of engage that way. We can do either or both of those. And then just anything you're seeing on this or any direction you have, or shall we just?
Well, I like the, because I saw that in your videos or when you showed when you were interviewing, that the in-person really helped kind of personalize it and they feel more enrolled in the process. I think if it's a Zoom, it's kind of like a light touch. Okay, fine, but it's not thorough. When you can get to see the passion in their faces about what's important to them. So whether you do it here or IRC or the high school, something like that would be.
So we'll work with Nairi to find the right logistic and where we think people will show up to.
I also, oh, go ahead. Oh, I also wondered in your one-on-one interviews, we have a small number of principals. We only have 5 principals, and I know, I see them as sort of in the focus group list, and I don't know. I thought maybe it might be interesting to get their one-on-one perspective. I don't know what other.
Because how Wendy has it set up, she has cabinet, but she has what she calls her leadership team. And in her leadership team, it's a little beyond cabinet, includes principals and who else?
Executive directors.
Yeah.
So all those people will get a chance. It's just whether they're all one-on-ones, which is going to be a little tough to manage, but can be done. Remember, we're looking for themes and trends across groups. And so if we have 5 different interviews with principals and only 2 themes really emerge that are shared themes, it kind of feeds, because what we're not doing is capturing every word for you, which you don't need to go through, and frankly wouldn't help because everybody will kind of view it. But we will hear some consistent themes in areas, things I can't predict now, but it always happens.
I think meeting with the executive team as a group would make sense, not trying to do it one-on-one. That'd just be really time consuming. But I think if you gathered them together as the executive team.
Now I'm hearing two different things. When you say executive team, who are you talking about?
So Wendy has her groups organized by an executive team, her management leadership team. That includes beyond just her cabinet. It includes the high school principals, our director of
Okay, gotcha.
special ed, a few other people like that, that she identifies as the executive team. And they're the district leaders, but they're not on cabinet.
So just call that, instead of site admin, we could say non-cabinet leadership team members as the focus group.
Yeah.
One-on-one for cabinet, because it's manageable, but the other one, you, as a group, to your point, for the all others that are considered leaders. So
Yeah.
then, and there, you have some of them, 5 of them are site admin, but there's a few other positions like executive director. So
Typically that site admin, if I put it out just like that, would be principals and assistant principals.
Mhm.
Or sometimes they've
Yeah.
separated and said, assistant principals may have some different issues, or politically there's some things going
Mm.
on, and
Mhm.
that's where we get some guidance.
I think what we're saying is you would do the site admin plus the, our director of special ed and our,
Oh, I would.
and a few other people.
I think
So
that
it wouldn't,
covers-
so site admin is just a little.
Well, but then
limited
it's,
given-
it's the assistant principals as well. It's a little bit bigger group.
So, and some of these, every district calls their people something
There's
different,
two.
but let me be clear. If we go down to focus groups, you understand the executive board is their e-board. It's who the teachers bring and who the classified brings. District office admin is typically certificated and classified, all of those executive directors. And sometimes they'll separate in a larger district. They'll say, okay, meet with the certificated directors
Mhm.
and then meet with the classified directors over here because we have 12 of each. Here I'd work with Wendy and say, Wendy, what's the dynamic?
I think we just want to make sure they get included somewhere.
100% they'll be included, and that'll be the job Nairi and I are working on with Wendy, is to say, okay, what are the political things that I don't know about? Where are the minefields here, and who do I want to get in separate? And who do I want to have together? But to a person, they'll get included. And to a person, to your point, we ask people at the end, again, if there's something you've been uncomfortable, something specific that didn't come up today, that you think,
Mhm.
please give us a call, and we will absolutely respond to that.
Let's talk for a minute about Teachers Association Executive Board. A lot of our teachers are also community members and long-term community members who know the community very well. I would like to see us go beyond just the executive board of our Locking Out Teachers Association to open it up to more of our teachers. Is that doable? Is that a good idea?
Well, the teachers are all invited, 100% employees are invited to complete the online survey with including an open-ended. And so that is where their voice typically falls. Could we do a separate afternoon at 3 o'clock at the high school for all teachers interested in coming in and participating in a focus group? We can do that. Maybe we'll get different information from the association. I would suggest we always include the association e-board. They're your negotiations partners. But if you want to expand that, by the way, the employees can also come to the community forums.
Yeah, it
those
just
are
seems
open.
like I'm not even sure who they consider their executive board. I know they have their negotiation team, but
Oh, no,
Well, they have a
have-
formal,
President,
I
a
mean,
vice
they have-
president, a treasurer, a
Yeah.
secretary.
I
So
just
that's-
would like to make sure we.
you're saying
include
broader.
broader,
Yeah.
if.
It's locking out. I mean,
Yeah,
the teachers.
I mean, it's the same group
would
that
like-
probably chooses the teacher of the year and I mean, what is that group? That's a subset of the. is
Their
that a
e-board is
special
there.
committee?
Your rank and file have elected their representatives who are their voice in negotiations, who are their
Right.
voice in processes like this.
Yep.
So clearly we're going to include those.
Yeah.
If we want an afternoon, let's say we have a 6 o'clock community forum and we have a 4:30 employee forum, teachers and classified members, because you also have classified people that aren't in there. We want to make sure we're being equitable
Yep.
to all our employee groups,
No,
of
it's
opening
small
up and
enough.
saying, come one, come all, 4 o'clock in the high school library,
Your chance, yeah.
your chance to have your voice
With
be
your
heard.
employee
That
hat
would
on.
be.
The only thing I'm concerned about is I think we really like the overall timelines reverse engineered from March, right before spring break selecting.
Yep.
This feels like the one part that could get out of hand if we
Mhm.
don't manage it, and it could force some delays if this is too exhaustive of a list. So you got to tell us when to keep on
Oh, I'll stay
timeline.
uncle. I'll let you know.
Okay.
And that's a part of was my response to Josh, was around the more individual meetings we have, obviously that could pose a
Yep.
problem.
It's just the
Um,
balance of managing time and getting into a situation where you have sort of monolithic thinking because you get a bunch of people who don't give you
Yeah.
what's really going on. They
You
don't
want to
see
separate enough, so
details.
it's unique enough to that group, and you pile them. I mean, if you collapse them down too much, you lose some of that.
Yeah.
I agree.
And my major goal is I don't want any, but somebody will say this. Well, nobody asked me.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
We don't want that either.
Look, Gosh, you got 3 emails about the online survey. There was a community forum. Your associations were represented. I want you to be able to say there were these opportunities. Yeah, you're
Yep.
right. We couldn't go door to door, but
We had 17
I-
unique
yeah,
mechanisms.
yeah.
I would like to see where parent leaders include the leadership groups of major groups that raise a lot of money and serve a lot of kids, like our MPA or music parents, that maybe the choral parents and a group like that. I'm trying to think, is that out of bounds, or are you worried that
Is that district affiliated?
I just want to make sure we know who
Or those
those
are
are,
district-
Octavia. The district affiliated organizations, I just listed some
Just
examples, like a
Okay, so
foundation.
wherever that falls.
I mean,
That would be
that's-
where it falls.
I think
So-
I
you would
know it's
have
not-
like
oh, no,
Ed
it's not LCAP,
Foundation, you would have Ed Foundation, you would have well, we've got PTA. We don't have boosters written down
Boosters,
here. We
Right.
don't have, we do have a bond oversight.
Well,
We
that's
do
the
have
other-
parcel tax oversight. Like we have places like that. The other thing that's not on here at all is the city. I don't see anything with city leadership. Do we?
I remember,
want to do that?
I asked them when they were looking for their city manager, did they want any feedback from us?
They said no.
So, well,
I'm just
Jocelyn,
saying,
Yeah.
I mean,
Let me
maybe
tell
they
you
can
what
do
we
this,
did.
offer the survey to them,
Mhm.
something like that, but
And that
Yeah.
falls into the bottom category. The email invitation, that's most often where that falls.
Right.
We can send a letter to your local elected officials, to your county supervisor, to your mayor and say, the board has asked us to reach out to you and they'd love to hear your thoughts about the superintendent. Here's a link to our survey. And if there's anything you'd like to share, you can call Gary Rutherford or Mike Matthews at these numbers. And so they can say they were invited.
So
Some of them will
to that
respond.
end, because that is a good point. So I think we would send them the online survey, but and we have this as a limitation always, is that when we blast out an email, it goes only to school families. So we talk about this being the survey is going to be specific to the families. We'll just have to figure out how we're communicating a community forum that is community, whether we ask our city partners to help us communicate the community forum, because our version of community is school community, and there's another version of community which is a larger community.
That works fine. And I'll be working very closely with Nairi to get all those in. And as you think of groups, shoot me an email. Octavia, if you think of a great parent affiliation group that we might have missed, we'll want to know that. Now, to manage expectations a bit. Been down this road a couple of times. The important thing is that everybody knows they have the opportunity. I think you'll be surprised at the numbers. We've done these where we've pushed it out, big districts, lots of it, and 4 people come. And we've had it where we didn't expect anybody and 70 people came. Very hard to predict. My main goal is to make sure everybody had the opportunity and knew about it, chose to at some level and had a chance to have their voice be in the mix. Reach out to me. And that's what we do. A lot of the local officials we send an email to, and you'd be surprised. They're pleased to be, they're honored that you thought of them. But at the end of the day, guys, your community kind of trusts you. To make the superintendent is farther away from them than you might think in their lives sometimes. And they kind of trust you to make the right decision.
Makes sense.
And so they won't necessarily take a night away from home to come to the meeting, but I hope they do. We'll be ready for them.
Can I ask you just what does the readout of these look like for us? Is it on an event by event basis, or do you then take all of that information and aggregate it?
We have not given you an event by event. It'd be tons of stuff to wade through. We do themes and trends, and it's in the leadership profile. Now, in our weekly communiques, I'll be saying, just a reminder, our community forum's on Tuesday. The next week, I'll say, we had 72 people come to our community forum. We had a rich conversation, and I'll kind of keep you apprised of what's going on. When the leadership profile comes, it'll be the themes and trends that we picked up. And again, I'll send you one so you can kind of take a look, and all the data from the survey. And we give that just in raw form. This is what you told us in the survey. This is what we learned from listening to you. And it's kind of magical. People when I go to that board meeting where I bring it to you and say, okay, how we do? You've had a chance to read it. Does it sound like? Most often they'll say, yep, that's us. They got it right. It's the community's pretty forthcoming and the themes and trends kind of jump out after. a few-
One of the things that Jamie does for us often is I'm not even sure what's called a word graphic where the words that come up
Wordle?
frequently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we could do one of those at some of these, because that really summarizes a lot of the comments quickly.
I mean, I just get into some of the things that we see as a board, the importance of having a risk management mindset, of stuff, litigation aware, things that the public maybe won't know at times. And so how do we have to ultimately prioritize some of those things on the back end. Even we get some great feedback and trends and themes, but they may not end up being the top things we're concerned about. We have to our job is to mash it all together.
So to that end, would you each like an individual phone call and be added to the one-on-ones? Would you like to participate as individuals and share your thoughts? Or do you feel like
I think you want to make it like optional. If we think we want it, we can ask him for one, or it's mandated 5, because that's just 5 more moving parts for him too.
I don't know. I mean, I think either we should all do it or none of us should do it. You know, so we're all on this.
Agreed.
Basis, and I'm very comfortable. Even this open session is a good opportunity for us to talk about these high level things. So I'm fine with that, sharing these things like this. I mean, I can't think of anything I would want to tell you privately that I'm not willing to say to you publicly.
the other opportunity for that is when we put the leadership profile on, because you'll be seeing everybody else's trends and themes, and it's a chance to say as a board, where's this issue? It's compelling here. I'll make it up. You know, we have a facilities management problem that needs to be addressed, and so we don't have a funding source for it. I don't see that on the list. Let's talk about that. And as a board, you have a chance around consensus to augment that leadership profile in a way that meets your shared perception of the district needs.
And the other reason I say that is I think our community really wants transparency in everything we do, including this. And the more we do publicly like this, the easier it is for us. So that we can, if anyone has any questions about the process, we can refer them to the video of today and they can watch the whole thing again if they want. And it just, I think what we want to avoid is anything that looks like we had a backroom, smoking room discussion of, you know, line from Hamilton, this is where the
room where it happens.
Yeah, the room where it happens. The room where it happens should be public is kind of where we'd like to go with it.
I also think, you know, it's our job to represent the community and the timeline of the way that this process works for us to see what the community feedback is and to use that I think is useful. So I think that's
I would love to take.
I will
this-
tell you the great moment is that leadership profile and the great result of this, all this work we do. Once we get there, you'll have your selection criteria. You'll understand what you're looking for in a clearer way. You'll have a report to your community about what matters most in La Cañada. You'll have a selection tool from which to create your interview questions. And it's an induction tool for the person you select. They'll hit the ground and say, okay, I can see what needs to be, that I need to learn about.
That's.
But do we have that step? I mean, because to me, back to the timelines, when all of that comes back, leadership profile is on what date? When are we going to have the
It's
finished?
in your January
That's the
meeting.
21st.
that we moved to the
Meeting
21st.
on the
Okay,
21st.
but then at some point, I still think I felt that part of our process would be, we are looking at, and maybe this is because it's mashed up from all this input, it's going to inform where we end up. If we have 12 key things we're looking for and what is prioritized for our job or for the La Cañada job. And it's, like I said, it was kind of references in the survey. These are the top 5, this is the next tier, this next tier. So when we get into some tough sledding discussions about the candidates, we look back at this, so here's this candidate does really well in our top tier 1. They're light on tier 2 and tier 3. I don't want to die on the sword on tier 2, tier 3 if they comply with tier 1. And I want that type of a rubric of some sort that we have our discussions at the very end again.
So that's in I think the special meeting the week of February 10th, right?
But you'll come into the meeting with your leadership profile that's outlined just what you just described, Joe. Maybe not in the format you're describing, but it's all there. You'll have the candidates and our analysis based on that profile as to who do we think are the best fits. You guys then chew on it and say, I look at this guy's resume, Gary, I'm not seeing what you see. Help me understand why that person's a tier 2.
So that's the February 3rd through 7th?
No, that's where you get a chance to review them. And I think it was the week of the 10th that Nairi's going to reach out and schedule a meeting.
Candidate slate?
Yeah.
the
Closed
that's-
session?
That's a couple hours of intense work, not like this, around a table and it's closed
Okay.
session.
Yeah. And knowing us, I would
That's
say
closed session.
couple hours is
Closed
being
session.
very optimistic. I would give you.
That to me is
half
probably
day.
one of the most critical steps. You've
Wait a
compiled
minute, you're thinking
everything.
That's too long or too short?
I think it's too short. I would,
Well, we
I
will
would
take as
plan
long as we
on
need.
joining us for a meal. So,
Always up for a meal. So, well, I want to be, honor your time. We have a little bit of business for closed session. I don't think very much. I think I have enough to give you the next round today.
Can-
What we don't have is the online survey.
So back to the survey, because it appears you want us to take it, but then that was a draft version. So do you want us to take the survey ourselves as well?
The survey is a live, that's the live survey. The link will be pushed out, the exact survey you see unless you make.
But I thought that's what we were going to discuss. Any feedback on the
I thought,
survey?
yeah, we were.
It is.
waiting.
It absolutely is.
I had, okay.
I thought you hadn't looked at it.
Well, it's, I don't have, well, I was the one that was late to the party on the survey. I looked at it. I actually took it a couple times. I'm fine with it. I don't see glaring things, but I didn't know if my peers had seen anything in the survey that they want to adjust or tweak.
I did. I'm not sure when you talk about board governance. What do you mean by that?
Can you give me the complete frame? Because I'm not looking at what you're.
On the survey, the one about superintendent search online survey, part 2, expertise and experience, the last category is how much weight should you put on board governance? And I'm not sure what you're asking the community.
Oh, or that they would understand it, maybe if you don't. In districts, and I can't tell you if it's an issue in La Cañada, if there is a lack of confidence or a divide between the board and the superintendent or perception of division, a question framed around board governance is telling them, this superintendent has got to get this board working in the same direction.
Thought it was policy driven, right? That legally you're doing things the right way. Brown Act, all that stuff, board governance, process and protocols. But if it's more about alignment and goal setting
I
and
wish I was looking at the survey. What are the contexts of some of the other items? I'm sorry. I should be-
Teaching and learning experience as a site principal,
Yeah.
understanding school and community culture, negotiations, labor relations, fiscal management, all those kind of broad categories. And I think to that, for your notes, I think we wanted to add a category of wellness.
Okay. Is that consensus?
I had the only one that I had.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. It's part of fiscal management, maybe just fiscal management slash risk
Fiscal
management.
slash risk management, because that gets all kinds of discussions. About what
Got it.
Is there consensus then that we could add wellness, and should we just get rid of board governance since we're not exactly sure if someone put that as critically important? I'm not even sure
well,
what that
okay.
means.
Okay. So here's the thing. So that's in part 2, which is expertise and experiences. And I think, maybe we should change board governance to like a district leadership or something, because what I read that as you've worked with a board because you basically have been a superintendent. Like, are we looking for someone who has the experience of running a district? And
Or collaboration.
yeah,
My
but
concern is
this
that-
this is about experience and expertise. It's not about what we value. Now that becomes less clear in the question from your perspective, how much weight should the board place on each area? But the top says below are specific areas of expertise that candidates for your superintendent position may possess. And then I thought, okay, how important? Like, basically, who are we looking, what experiences are we looking for? That in that first question, that was what I sort of, how I was reading it. So board governance to me is about leadership. Have they held leadership at the highest levels, and how important is that? So but I don't know if that.
That gives us 3 different takes on what. we
Yes,
meant by
exactly.
board
Which
governance.
is a good sign that it needs to be changed
Yeah.
at the very.
Needs to be changed or cut. I think you may make an interesting point. I'm not sure, how many of the people completed the survey have gone to a board meeting, understand the relationship of the board and the superintendent. If you're not in the papers all the time as being a wildly divided, show at your board meetings, and I haven't seen evidence of that, maybe board governance isn't a good fit for this survey and we
Yeah.
should eliminate it.
Yeah, because to Dan's point, the worst survey data is the survey data that you get where people think it's where we get, you know, a bunch of people thinking it's different things, because then
Right.
it's, you're getting an answer, but it's a very unreliable answer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. Maybe we just cut
Let's
it.
cut that. I'm good with that.
Understanding of- A lot of legal stuff the superintendent needs to be. thinking
But
about.
that'll be something that we're looking at in candidates. I mean, I think the community is concerned about fiscal management and, as to your point, Joe, / risk management. I think that's probably where that comes in. Like, what kind of experience do you have with fiscal and risk management?
I also think that if you have experience as a site principal, there is a logical link between experience as site principal and understanding of some of the basic laws that they need to be following. The same goes for,
Like ed code, I'm thinking like awareness of ed code would be nice. to Link it
no, if you're a site principal,
inside of that.
you get trained in that.
We could just add a requirement, you have to be a current
Awareness.
member of the California Bar.
Teaching, learning.
I think there's certain things that are just, just understood.
I think it comes under fiscal and risk management. I think that that's kind of a lot of it, especially the risk management part.
Risk can mean legal.
Yeah.
So did you guys want to change fiscal management to fiscal and risk management?
That's the
That-
note I made. That's the note I made. And we're going to eliminate governance. And then I'm not sure I need to go back and really look at the survey to make sure that wellness is in one of the categories where it fits best as one of the criteria. It may be that one, but I will take a look at
Yeah, I
that.
think it needs to go somewhere.
Are you asking for expertise in wellness? Because
Well-
this section of expertise.
No, what is this
Right.
critically important that you have, how much weight should you place on it? You know, it's like,
But it's
how
at the top.
important?
This is below or specific areas of expertise that candidates for your position may possess. And if there's wellness, go here or into a different question behind this.
3 leadership qualities, if you wanted to add that. I don't know if it would go into 2. But
Because they're not gonna be therapists, right?
3.
No, I guess it's really running student wellness or student staff wellness, or, you know, programs involving wellness or something. I just think it could be a community concern.
That gets in the next question.
Wouldn't that be understanding school and community culture though?
It could fit there.
Or
That's,
is it not, is it too generic?
Can't we just go to part 3 where it's leadership qualities? And
Okay.
add that as one of the
Well,
checks?
I think Gary's point is it's well taken. He'll find a good place to put it.
I'll find
Okay.
it. I'll take the least, the surveys that work least well are those written by committee. I don't have to tell you guys it becomes very challenging. But I think I get the big idea around finding a place for wellness. And I think in these cases, it's important the community sees that the board thought that was important enough to put in their survey. And so it has a place for that reason alone. We'll work in the risk management and fiscal. We'll eliminate the governance. I'll send you out a draft on that.
Knows the importance of code for mitigation on the varsity field.
And if you could just change the Board of
Oh, no.
Education. The governing board, I'm not sure if you put Board of Education, our community might think you mean the county.
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
You use the term Board of Education. If we could just change those references to governing board, because I think
Okay.
our community might think Board of Education means the county.
Okay,
The LCUSD governing.
thank you. We'll do that. Okay, well, that gets us through the major goals I was hoping we could get through. And if I can prevail on you for 15 or 20 more minutes in closed session, we'll wrap things up.
Good.
All right, so we will go into closed session at 11:13.